So spake he, and plunged into the heaving sea. But I betook me to the ships with my godlike company, and my heart was darkly troubled as I went. Now after I had come down to the ship into the sea, and had made ready our supper, and a mortal night had come on, then did we lay us to rest upon the sea beach. So soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, first of all we drew down our ships to the fair salt sea, and placed the masts and the sails in the gallant ships. And the crew too climbed on board, and sat upon the benches, and smote the grey sea water with their oars. Then back I went to the waters of Aegyptus, the heaven-fed stream, and there I moored the ships, and offered the acceptable sacrifice of hecatombs. So when I had appeased the anger of the everlasting gods, I piled a barrow to Agamemnon, that his fame might never be quenched. So having fulfilled all, I set out for home, and the deathless gods gave me a fair wind, and brought me swiftly to mine own dear country. But lo, now tarry in my halls till it shall be the 11th day hence, or the 12th. Then will I send thee with all honor on thy way, and give thee splendid gifts, 3 horses and a polished car. And moreover I will give thee a goodly chalice, that thou mayest pour forth before the deathless gods, and be mindful of me all the days of thy life. What kind of car do you think he's going to give him? A Porsche? Do you think it's going to be a Porsche? A Lotus? A Dodge Ram? I am the least car guy that's ever existed. I can't even name 3 cars. I'm assuming that that last little bit of today's, but lo, now tarry in my halls till blah, 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 is him shifting from telling his story to talking directly to Telemachus, saying that you should stay for at least 11 days or 12 if you want. And once you've done that, then I'll send you on your way and give you a bunch of gifts like horses and a polished car, I'm assuming a chariot. And that he's going to give him a goodly chalice, one that he can use for offerings to the gods. I would imagine that the better the chalice, the more goodly the offering. It seems like the gods would be pretty vain if that were the case. Immediately put in mind of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where it's the most humble of cups that they have to choose wisely. And also, back to my video game metaphors, and I'm sure, again, not accurate at all to modern gaming, but when Menelaus is talking about going back to Aegyptus to do his offerings, it's like if you're in an open world map and you suddenly find the edge of the map where there's like an invisible boundary that you can't go beyond, that it's kind of forcing you in one direction. So it's like, well, the only way I can go is back to Aegyptus because the invisible boundary of the map won't let me go anywhere else. I don't have too much more to talk about regarding today's passage. We learned nothing more about Odysseus. Let me see if I got something else in my Bernard Knox introduction that I want to talk about. I'm still working through it. Oh, yeah, here's something. Because we talked, I think, previously from this introduction about Homer being blind, that as a poet, he was using the same means of composition as his contemporaries, which would have been writing. However, there is also some schools of thought that think that Homer might have been illiterate, and that if he were illiterate, then the likelihood of him having concocted stories like the Iliad and the Odyssey are, because they're so long, virtually unlikely, because he'd have to do them from memory. And if he wasn't able to write them down or read what he wrote down, then, one goes with the other, obviously, then it's quite possible that these were passed through oral tradition by who, TBD, but that he might have left behind much shorter versions of these that were then expanded into the versions we know now or are reading from in the show much, much later after his death. And again, I don't fully have the story or understanding or the different positions that the academics, the scholars, the experts have about the authorship of these books and whether or not Homer is a sole author, if there's a collective of authors, if Homer is a pseudonym. There's lots of different theories out there. But to me, with this kind of opening up of possibilities, I'm inclined to believe, with the information I currently have, that it's got to be some sort of, if not collective of people working together, then it is multiple authors over the passage of many, many years or centuries even, slowly shaping and bringing the story into posterity for us to encounter today. More on that later as I learn more. If you have any texts you'd like me to read, you think that would be interesting, I'm all for this. I want to know as much as I can. I really dig this stuff. Very open to your recommendations. Oh, also, I read the Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood, which gives a very interesting account from Penelope's perspective of Troy, her relationship with Helen, the Odyssey, and I guess, spoiler alert, it does, I don't know why I didn't consider this, it does kind of tip its hand at what happens at the end of the Odyssey, so I don't know how we get there exactly, because it's told through Penelope's perspective, not Odysseus's, but I can't wait to talk about the Penelope. But it goes to the larger question I had brought up a few episodes ago about how do we feel about checking out some adaptations of this book before we finish reading it. I'm a recovering completionist and a recovering perfectionist, and I tend to like to do things chronologically, so knowing the source text before I get too deep into the adaptations is typically how I like to do things, but it might be interesting to dig into some adaptations and see how that benefits the show instead of just the pure raw experience day in and day out of not knowing where the story's going or what exactly is going to happen. I'm at the risk of making this episode too long. I kind of feel like there is the idea of spoiler culture, and like I get it and I try to respect it to a large degree. At the same time, I do feel like there's this anti-discourse, not maybe intentionally, that comes from spoiler culture. And let me give you a scenario, and you tell me if this sounds at all familiar to you. You're at a party, you're at a get-together, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, what have you, and someone brings up the newest show that people want to talk about, Stranger Things, Breaking Bad, hell, cover all my bases here, Dynasty, Dallas, going way back in time, I don't know, anything where there's a cliffhanger, a continuing story where you're on edge to know what happens to characters and situations from episode to episode. Lost, I'm just throwing another one in there, doesn't matter. Someone brings that up, and they're very excited about, oh my God, did you see what happened in the last episode of fill in the blank? And then someone else at that get-together, that party, says, don't say anything, I haven't seen the last couple episodes. Then what happens? That puts an end to the conversation right then and there. Someone might say, okay, fine, fair enough. All I'll say is, give one kind of ambiguous thing. But the conversation never goes any further than that. And if it's a party, if it's a get-together, it might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month before you see that person again to have that conversation. And there will more than likely be a new show that they want to talk about, and the same conversation comes up. And so we're never actually talking about the shows with each other as they happen. That has kind of led me to go like, I've taken this, I wouldn't say it's a hardline stance. It's not a hardline stance. I don't take a hardline stance against many things. I'm not going to say nothing, but where I'm like, that doesn't feel like a healthy environment for discourse and art appreciation and just discussing ideas. So I try to live by what I'm suggesting, which is give me the spoilers. Let me know what happens, because if a book, a TV show, a movie can't grab me and tell me something by how it gets there rather than what happens, if what happens is the only thing it has going for it, that seems pretty superficial to me, and I'm not sure is worth so much of my time. But if it is taking the time to really root me in the experience of how we get there, regardless if I know where we're going, I'm going to get something out of that, and that's going to be something I want to talk about. So, with all of that, how do we feel about looking ahead and checking out some adaptations of the Odyssey, particularly concerning the upcoming Christopher Nolan film? I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't touch on that film when it comes out, but it's going to come out right in the middle of our show. So we got some stuff we got to confront at some point here. Let me know what you think. Sign off on Discord. The link is in the show notes. I want to hear from you. Tell me what you think. And we'll just continue with this story in one way or another. Until tomorrow, maybe we'll hear from Telemachus again. Who knows? But until then, okay, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.